I still remember the weight of that crystal award in my hands, the way the restaurant lights made it sparkle as I held it up for the photographs. Nurse Manager of the Year, the inscription read, and every letter felt like validation for the countless sleepless nights I'd spent at Massachusetts General Hospital. The applause was still echoing when Ryan dropped to one knee, his nervous smile breaking into pure joy as he opened that little velvet box. The diamond caught the light, sending tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth, and for a moment, everything in my world was perfect. I was 29 years old, at the absolute peak of my career, watching the man I loved promise me forever in front of a room full of strangers who had become invested in our fairy tale moment. Ryan was everything I dreamed of: successful architect, kind heart, the type of man who remembered to bring flowers on random Tuesdays just because he'd seen them and thought of me. We had plans, big, beautiful plans that stretched out like a golden highway toward our future. Then my phone rang. The sound cut through the romantic atmosphere like a blade, and I almost ignored it. Almost. But something about the insistent buzzing made me glance at the screen, and when I saw Dad flashing there, along with 7 missed calls and a string of text messages, my stomach dropped. My father never called during the evening unless something was catastrophically wrong. "Madison, honey, you need to come home." His voice was shaking in a way I'd never heard before, the strong, commanding tone I'd grown up with reduced to something fragile and desperate. "It's your mother. The doctors, they found something. Breast cancer, stage 3. They're saying it's aggressive, sweetheart, really aggressive." The restaurant seemed to tilt around me, the congratulations and well wishes from other diners fading into a distant hum. Ryan was still on one knee, the ring box opened between us, but suddenly it felt like we were separated by an ocean instead of a few feet of space. "How long?" I managed to ask, though my voice sounded like it was coming from someone else entirely. "They don't know. Could be months, could be longer if we catch it right. But Madison, she's asking for you. She keeps saying she won't trust anyone else to help her through this. You're a nurse, you know what to do, and she needs her baby girl." I looked at Ryan, whose expression had shifted from joy to concern as he watched my face crumble. The engagement ring sat there between us, representing everything I was about to lose, and I didn't even know it yet. Within 6 hours, I was on a plane to Pennsylvania, my hospital badge still clipped to my dress from the award ceremony. Ryan had wanted to come with me, but I told him to wait, that I needed to assess the situation first. I thought I'd be gone for a week, maybe 2. I had no idea I was flying toward a year that would strip away every piece of the life I'd built. The house looked exactly the same from the outside, the same blue shutters my mother repainted every spring, the same rose bushes that she fussed over like children. But inside, everything felt different, heavy. My father, Warren, had aged a decade in the months since I'd last seen him. His shoulders were stooped, his usually perfect hair disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant worry. My mother sat in her favorite armchair, the one by the window where she used to read romance novels on Sunday afternoons. She looked smaller somehow, as if the cancer had already begun stealing pieces of her away. When she saw me, she started crying, not the gentle tears of relief I might have expected, but the desperate, clinging sobs of someone drowning. "Madison, thank God you're here," she whispered, reaching for me with hands that trembled. "I can't do this without you. I can't trust anyone else. These nurses they have at the hospital, they don't care like you do. They don't know me like you do." Before I could even set down my suitcase, my sister Heather's face appeared on my mother's laptop screen, calling in from her pristine kitchen in Seattle. She looked polished as always, her blonde hair perfectly styled, a glass of wine in her manicured hand. Behind her, I could see granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that probably cost more than my annual salary. "Oh Maddie, thank goodness you came so quickly," she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice, not relief that I was there to help our mother, but relief that she wouldn't have to be. "I wish I could be there, but you know how it is with the kids and David's promotion to VP. I just can't leave right now. But you're perfect for this. You're single, you don't have kids to worry about, and nursing is what you do anyway." The casual dismissal of my entire life hit me like a slap, but I was too overwhelmed by the situation to process it fully. My father jumped in before I could respond. "Madison, we need you to take a leave of absence from the hospital," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Your mother needs round-the-clock care, and we can't afford professional nurses for that long. Besides, she won't trust anyone else. This is your responsibility as her daughter." "But my job," I started to protest. "Can be replaced," he cut me off. "Jobs come and go, but family is forever. Your mother gave you life, Madison. She sacrificed everything for you and Heather when you were growing up. Now it's your turn to sacrifice for her. The guilt hit me like a physical weight. How could I argue with that? How could I put my career above my mother's life? When I called my supervisor at the hospital to explain the situation, she was understanding but firm. They could hold my position for 3 months, maybe 4 with good cause, but after that, they'd have to find a replacement. Ryan drove down from Boston the next weekend, his arms full of flowers and his face full of concern. He took one look at the dark circles under my eyes, at the way I'd already lost weight from stress and irregular eating, and pulled me aside. "Madison, this isn't sustainable," he said gently. "You look exhausted, and you've only been here a week. What about hiring a professional service? I can help with the cost of money's an issue." Before I could answer, my father appeared in the doorway, his face dark with anger. "Excuse me, but this is a family matter," he said to Ryan, his voice dripping with disdain. "I don't recall asking for your opinion about how we handle our affairs. I'm just concerned about Madison." Ryan tried to explain. "Madison is exactly where she needs to be," my father interrupted. "Maybe if you really cared about her, you'd be supporting her decision instead of trying to undermine it." The argument escalated from there, with my father essentially ordering Ryan to leave and not come back until he could respect our family's choices. I watched the man I loved drive away, feeling helpless to stop it, telling myself it was temporary, that once things settled down, we'd work it out. But things never settled down. They only got worse. The first month was brutal, but I told myself it was normal. Everyone needed time to adjust to a new routine. I took over all of my mother's medications, coordinating with her oncology team, managing her appointment schedules, and monitoring her reactions to chemotherapy. But somehow, the medical care became the least of my responsibilities. "Madison, dear, could you clean the bathroom again? I think there might be germs from the cleaning service," my mother would call out. "And while you're at it, maybe mop the floors? The chemicals they use aren't good for someone with cancer." Soon I was doing all the housework because everything was potentially contaminated or dangerous for someone undergoing treatment. I was cooking every meal because restaurant food was too risky and frozen dinners were full of chemicals. I was doing the grocery shopping, the laundry, the yard work, and still providing medical care around the clock. My father, meanwhile, seemed to have appointed himself as my supervisor, critiquing everything I did while contributing nothing himself. "Madison, your mother's pillows aren't fluffed properly," he'd say from his recliner, where he spent most of his day watching television. "And I think you missed a spot when you were dusting the living room." When I suggested that maybe he could help with some of the household tasks, he looked at me as if I'd suggested something absurd. "I'm dealing with the emotional burden of potentially losing my wife," he said. "I think that's quite enough for me to handle." 3 months in, Heather started posting photos from a family vacation to Hawaii on social media, with captions about sending prayers to Mom from paradise and family is everything. She called once a week, usually while I was in the middle of something critical, to offer vague emotional support and remind me how grateful I should be for this opportunity to bond with Mom. "I wish I could be there to help," she'd say, the sound of ocean waves audible in the background, "but you know how it is. David's career is really taking off, and the kids have so many activities. Besides, you're so much better at this than I would be." When I mentioned that I was struggling financially, my leave of absence was unpaid, and I was using my credit cards to buy organic groceries and expensive supplements that my mother insisted she needed, Heather's response was a breezy, "Oh, I'm sure Dad will cover all that when this is over." He promised he would, didn't he? He had promised. "Don't worry about money," he told me that first night. "Any income you lose, any expenses you incur, we'll pay you back double when your mother is better. Consider this an investment in our family." But when my credit card was declined at the pharmacy while picking up my mother's prescriptions, and I asked my father for help, his response was sharp and accusatory. "What are you spending money on? I give you a roof over your head and food to eat. How much more do you need?" By month 6, my mother's health had stabilized significantly. The chemotherapy was working, her energy was returning, and her prognosis had improved dramatically. I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, we were approaching the light at the end of the tunnel. That's when the demands became truly unreasonable. "Madison, I've been thinking," my mother announced one morning as I brought her breakfast in bed, a ritual that had somehow become expected even though she was perfectly capable of walking to the kitchen. "That fence out back is looking really shabby. Do you think you could repaint it this weekend?" I stared at her, exhausted from another sleepless night monitoring her medications, my hands cracked and dry from constant cleaning and sanitizing. "Mom, I'm not really equipped for home improvement projects. Maybe we could hire someone?" Her face fell into the expression of disappointed martyrdom that I'd come to dread. "I just thought, since you're here anyway, and I don't have much to look forward to these days. But I suppose if it's too much trouble for you to do something nice for your dying mother." "You're not dying," I said firmly. The doctors said a lot of things," she cut me off. "But I know my own body, Madison. I know I don't have much time left, and I just wanted the house to look nice. But don't worry about it. I'll just have to live with the embarrassment of that ugly fence. So I painted the fence. And when she decided the guest bathroom needed new wallpaper, I hung wallpaper. When she thought the kitchen cabinets looked outdated, I spent a weekend refinishing them. Each task was presented as a small favor for a sick woman. Each refusal was met with guilt and emotional manipulation. Meanwhile, my old life continued to crumble around me. The hospital had to fill my position permanently. My savings account was emptied, my credit cards were maxed out, and my carefully built professional network was withering from neglect. Ryan tried to maintain our relationship long distance, but the strain was enormous. Our phone calls became shorter and less frequent. When he visited, my father made it clear he wasn't welcome, criticizing everything from his shoes to his suggestions about my mother's care. He doesn't understand what real family commitment looks like, my father would say after Ryan left. If he truly loved you, he'd be supporting this instead of trying to pull you away from where you're needed most. The final blow came on the 1-year anniversary of my return home. I woke up to an email from Ryan, a long, heartbroken message explaining that he couldn't wait any longer, that he felt like he was in love with a ghost, that he was sorry but he had to move on. He'd met someone else, someone who could actually be present in their relationship. That same morning, I received a call from my former supervisor at the hospital. My replacement was working out beautifully, she said. There was no longer a position available for me should I decide to return. She was sorry, but they'd had to move forward. I sat in the bathroom with the shower running, water rushing to mask the sound of my sobbing, and realized I had lost everything. My career, my relationship, my financial security, my future, all sacrificed for people who seemed to view my suffering as a small price to pay for their comfort. But it was my mother's reaction to the news that finally opened my eyes completely. "Oh honey, that's too bad about Ryan," she said when I told her about the breakup, her voice carrying about as much emotion as if I'd mentioned the weather. "But you know, maybe it's for the best. You're too busy to maintain a relationship right now anyway. And don't worry about the job. You can always find another nursing position when this is all over. They're desperate for nurses everywhere." The casual dismissal of everything I'd lost, everything I'd sacrificed for her, hit me like a physical blow. She was getting better, everyone could see it. Her energy was back, her hair was growing in, her latest scans were clear. She was going to survive, and I was drowning. That night, I found myself researching professional nursing rates online, calculating the true cost of everything I provided. What I discovered made my hands shake with rage. 2 weeks later, when my mother's oncologist officially declared her in remission, I made an announcement at dinner. "I'll be returning to Boston in 2 weeks, I said calmly, cutting into my chicken as if I were discussing the weather. The explosion was immediate and predictable. "Absolutely not," my father slammed his hand on the table, making the water glasses jump. "You can't just abandon us now. Your mother still needs care. And frankly, Madison, you've been living here rent-free for over a year. You owe us more than just walking away." I continued eating, waiting for him to finish his tantrum. When he paused for breath, I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope, placing it carefully next to my plate. "You're absolutely right, Dad," I said. "Everything should be fair and square." Inside the envelope was an itemized bill. Rent. Private room with attached bathroom, $800 per month times 12 months equals $9,600. Utilities, electric, water, internet, $250 per month times 12 months equals $3,000. Total due, $12,600. Note, payment is due before departure. Heather has contributed significantly in emotional support, which as we all know, is priceless. My father's face went through several color changes as he read, finally settling on an unhealthy shade of purple. "This is ridiculous. You're our daughter. Family doesn't charge family." I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. "You're absolutely right again, Dad. Family doesn't charge family. I'm so glad we agree on that principle." I excused myself from the table and went to my room, where I spent the evening making phone calls. The first was to a lawyer I'd found online, confirming what I'd already researched about verbal contracts and family agreements. The second was to Mrs. Henderson, our neighbor, who had watched me work around the clock for months and would be happy to testify about the hours I'd put in if needed. The next morning, I called an emergency family meeting, insisting that Heather join via video call. When everyone was assembled in the living room, I placed a professional-looking folder on the coffee table. "Since we're talking about money and family obligations," I began, "I thought it would be helpful to have a clear accounting of everything." I opened the folder and began reading from the document inside. Professional Nursing Services Invoice, Specialized Oncology Nursing Care, $75/hour times 16 hours/day times 365 days equals $438,000. Emergency and overnight differential, additional $25,000. Household Management Services, $500 per week times 52 weeks equals $26,000. Transportation and medical escort services, $4,000. Pain and suffering / lost career opportunities, $150,000. Total services provided, $643,000 less. Room and board costs, minus $12,600. Amount due, $630,400. The silence in the room was deafening. On the laptop screen, I could see Heather's mouth hanging open in shock. My father had gone completely white, and my mother was making small gasping sounds. I've consulted with a lawyer, I continued in the same calm tone. Dad's promise to pay me back double for any losses constitutes a verbal contract that's legally enforceable in Pennsylvania. This invoice reflects the standard rates for the services I provided, and I have witnesses who can verify the hours I've worked. I placed a business card on top of the invoice. You have 30 days to arrange payment. My lawyer will be in touch if we can't reach an amicable agreement. The meltdown that followed was spectacular. My father tried every manipulation tactic in his arsenal: threats, guilt, accusations, appeals to family loyalty. My mother burst into tears, claiming I was being cruel to a cancer patient. Heather disappeared from the video call entirely, but I was done. Done with being their unpaid servant. Done with sacrificing my life for people who saw my suffering as acceptable collateral damage. Done with being grateful for the privilege of being exploited. When they realized I was serious, when they understood that their social standing in the community would be destroyed if I actually took them to court, they had no choice. My father sold his beloved vintage car and my parents' vacation home in Florida. The check was written with shaking hands and delivered without a word of thanks. 6 months later, I was standing in my new office in downtown Boston, looking out at the city skyline I'd missed so desperately. The nameplate on my door read Carter Care Advocates, fighting for patient and caregiver rights. I'd used the money from my family to start a consulting firm that helped other family caregivers avoid the trap I'd fallen into, ensuring they were fairly compensated and their rights protected. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, a long, rambling message about how sorry she was, how much she missed me, how the family needed me to come home for Christmas. I read it once, then blocked her number, just as I'd blocked my father's and Heather's. Some people might call what I did cruel or vindictive, but as I looked out at the bustling city below, at the life I'd rebuilt from the ashes of their betrayal, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year: peace. I had learned that family isn't about blood or obligation or guilt. It's about mutual respect, support, and love that flows both ways. My biological family had taught me that lesson by showing me its opposite. Now I was surrounded by chosen family, clients who became friends, colleagues who respected my expertise, and eventually, someone who loved me for who I was, not what I could provide. The invoice had been about more than money. It had been about reclaiming my worth, establishing my value, and refusing to accept less than I deserved. I never went back home. I never reconciled with my parents or sister. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as ash. Instead, I built new bridges, stronger ones, based on equality and respect rather than exploitation and obligation. The girl who had walked into that Pennsylvania house a year and a half earlier, the one who believed family came before everything, who thought love meant endless sacrifice, who measured her worth by her willingness to disappear, she was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her value, who demanded respect, who understood that the greatest act of self-love is refusing to accept less than you deserve. And for the first time in my adult life, I was truly, completely free.